This is the 29th of December, the last video of the year.
2021. Wow.
Yes, wow is right. And today we're doing whatever we can of chapter 9 of Daniel, which in my opinion is one of the hardest chapters to sort out.
Yeah.
And the Jews have done it because it's their history.
Yeah.
And I was just looking at the calendar. We're in year 5782. The year 5782.
Wow.
They have been keeping track of the years since the day Adam sinned. Therefore, I have more confidence in the dates that they have put these things in. Remember when we were in Portland and we were doing a seminar for people who might want to join SIL and become translators? And I was teaching the translation course.
Yeah.
And I wanted to show them how you run into difficulties in translation that you have to work out. And I picked chapter 9 of Daniel, verse 27, 28 or something like that. And I'd run into such horrible problems that I couldn't really get it worked out. But I think they got the idea. It was difficult. The thing is, I went to all Christian commentaries, and none of them could agree on the date of what any of these things started.
Wow.
And so I was trying to use the commentary that was the most popular and the most used. But anyway, it just shows that translation is not easy. And of course, I didn't have the brains to, or something, to try and find Jewish commentators or whatever.
It wasn't in our mind at that time.
No, I think you can find it in the Talmud. Because it usually covers a lot of the commentaries. So anyway, today we're going to try and do Daniel 9.
Are you recording okay?
Yes. Okay. And one of the problems is that Daniel was having a problem.
Daniel had a problem.
He was really, he just thought, oh my goodness, what's wrong? We're not going out of the... What had happened was Babylon had fallen.
Yeah.
This is the first year of what the Christians call Darius.
Yeah, Darius.
But in all the Hebrew Bibles, it's Daravesh.
Yeah, Daravesh.
So in the first year of Daravesh, 70 years for Babylon's downfall was completed. And he didn't know why there wasn't some rush to get the Israelites back to Jerusalem. So I'm not giving you what I know.
Okay.
I'm giving you what Skobach and also Tovia Singer,
Rabbi Tovia
Singer, Rabbi Skobach have taught this for people to grasp a hold of it. All the rabbis that have studied any prophecies would have the same information, but they have given it out. And Tovia Singer has written a book called Let's Get Biblical. Let's see, I do there. Let's Get Biblical. And he's got it all outlined in here. And so I've taken what he has said, and that's what I'm sharing with you. I'm not sharing something I was able to figure out. So what happens is, let's begin in chapter 9 and see what it says. I'm not going to read every verse.
No.
Because what happens is Daniel is very upset, and he prays this very long prayer. It was the first year of Darius, son of Ahasuerus, the Median stock, who was made king over the kingdom of the Chaldeans. Chaldean is the general name of the area. The Assyrians had them, then Babylon had them. They're tribes that live in the...
So it could be both Babylon and
Chaldeans, yeah.
and Assyria.
Yeah, right. Well, yes. And then the Medes and the Persians, who are on the
Yeah.
east side and north side of Babylon, came in and took over.
Right.
It's sort of like Babylon conquered Assyria, and then Syria came back to bite them.
Yeah.
And this time they're called the Medes and the Persians. But in the midst of that is these Chaldean tribes. That was the heart of Babylon. Okay. In the year 1 of his reign, I, Daniel, studied the books concerning the number of years that Yah told Jeremiah the prophet it would take to fulfill the desolation of Jerusalem. 70 years. Okay, we have the date of that. It's in, the prophecy was Jeremiah 25:12. And I'm going to read it to you from this book that Tovia has here. And it shall be at the completion of 70 years, I will visit upon the king of Babylon and iniquity and upon the Chaldeans, and I will make it for everlasting desolations. The interesting thing is people say, well, Babylon's back again. It wasn't desolated forever. I just read last week or the week before how they've gone out to this place where Nebuchadnezzar had his palace.
Yeah.
And they're trying to dig it out and find the gardens and it's a ruin. It's never been rebuilt.
Wow.
So it's true.
Yeah, okay.
And it probably never will be rebuilt.
Yeah. So just because Babylon developed at one time was a powerful country, it didn't have to do with the palace and stuff.
Right. So I'm going to put up, I took this from his book, the dates, the years, and I'm putting it up here. Some people might want to read. I don't know if I have it high enough. I can't tell. I can't see what I'm doing because I'm putting it in front of the...
I can also send that out with a recording too.
Okay, you could do that. Because it gives the year on the Jewish calendar when the prophecy was given, when it was fulfilled, and there's some things that the angel that comes to, Gabriel comes to straighten these things out for Daniel. And so there's some complications to these years and dates because the count to when the Messianic kingdom would start is 490 years. That gets embedded into when the temple was destroyed, which is not when Babylon first took them out.
No, that's right.
So that complicates the whole scheme of things.
Okay. So you have the time when the first Jews were taken out to Babylon, and then later the temple was destroyed. So
right.
Two different dates.
So we get some different kinds of dates and periods, and that's the complexity of this chapter. So I'll take that down now, and Frank will try and send that with the video. So he's really distraught because he can't figure it out. So I turned my face unto Yah God to petition him with prayer and entreaties, with fasting, sackcloth, and ashes. I prayed to Yah my God, and I confessed, saying, O Lord, the great and awesome God, who keeps the covenant and the love with those who love him and keep his commandments, we have sinned and offended, done evil, rebelled, strayed from your commandments and your laws. We did not obey your servants the prophets, who spoke in your name to the kings, our princes, our fathers, and all the people of the land. Justice is yours, O Lord. Now, what's happening here in Daniel's heart? Because Babylon has fallen in the 70 years, and there's no command for them to go back, he thinks it's because they've sinned too greatly and have not confessed their sins and repented enough, so that God is denying them the fulfillment of the prophecy. And so this is the part that's confusing to him. He knows the 2 times that Jeremiah prophesied 70 years. He thinks that the 2 are the same 70 years.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not going to read all of his prayer because he really does a lot of confessing and he's mortified, and the prayer goes on for a long time, talking about how they've transgressed. So we get down to verse, we're going the wrong direction in this Bible. That happens when you got Hebrew. We get down to where he starts talking about Jerusalem and the holy mountain, and their sins of their fathers in Jerusalem has become a disgrace.
What verse?
Now we're down to verse 17, and now let our God listen to the prayer of your servant and to his entreaties.
Okay.
And so he's really begging God there to have mercy on them in end of verse 18. Forgive us. And then in verse 20, he says, and I was still speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, pouring out my entreaty before Yah, my God, and about my God's holy mountain. And I was still speaking my prayer when the man, and he uses the word man, Gabriel. I'm surprised that it was man, but I looked over here in verse 21, and that's this one, and the Od on the Gabriel Ashar. I don't see, Ha-ish, yeah, he said the man, Gabriel. So they translated it literally.
That's interesting because he's an angel, but he's called a man here.
Right. So
Of course,
that shows that angels look like men
they
many
can appear
times.
as men, yeah.
Whom I had seen at the start of my vision, the visions that he'd had like in 7, I think that was his first vision. The others were, he was interpreting visions. So he approached me soaring in flight. So he saw this guy fly in. I don't think he had wings. I think it's just that in the land of immortality, you are not limited to things. He gave me understanding as he instructed me. Okay, so he saw that Daniel had a problem with these prophecies. And God sent him to help straighten Daniel out. Daniel, I have now come forth to teach you understanding. At the very start of your entreaties, a word came forth, and I have come to tell it because you are beloved. God sees the contrite heart, and he loves him.
Mm-hmm.
Understand the word and grasp the meaning of the vision. 70 cycles of a week of years are decreed upon your people in your holy city to complete transgressions. Okay. You know what the 70 weeks of years is? That's 490 years.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And it finishes up the holy city. The transgressions are going to be finished to finish sins and atone for iniquity. All iniquity will be atoned. And to bring everlasting justice, to validate the vision and the prophet, and to anoint a holy of holies. 490 years before that can happen. So my question was always, well, the 490 years came to pass when and this is telling ahead of time because a lot of people don't realize this. The 490 years came to an end when Titus destroyed the temple and
In
the
70
city.
AD.
Yeah. So
Oh.
why didn't we have this thing that the city was finalized with transgressions and so on and so forth? What the angel is trying to say is, Daniel, we haven't reached the 490 years that's decreed for your city. So of course there's sin. Of course there's transgressions. Because we haven't completed this. Actually, Isaiah said you're going to pay double for your sin.
Yeah.
Well, they hadn't paid double for their sin yet.
First punishment was
That when the temple was destroyed.
Yeah.
The second one will be when the temple is destroyed again.
Okay.
But if the 490 years means you don't have to suffer anymore if you get it right.
Okay.
I always thought, well, that just means that's it. But it doesn't mean that. It means that there's no, at any time past that 490 years, the kingdom of God could be set up. It depends on you people and the choices you make.
It's been going on for a long time since.
And I couldn't find the verse. I know I've read it and heard it mentioned many times where it says, and I think it's in Isaiah, that the time could be cut short. But
yeah.
if it's not, and the wording is sort of like, what is he saying, But he's saying you can end the second punishment. It depends on you. You make the choice.
We're still making the choice.
But it's going to come at a set time, whether you make it or not.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So we're getting close to that time when God's going to say, all right, it's coming. No matter what condition you're in, you're going to have to face the consequences of not having done what Daniel is praying about here. He's praying that our sins will be forgiven and mercy and we'll live right. That time when the city is transformed into what the angel is saying here has a certain deadline.
Okay.
It could have come after 490 years, but if you people haven't done your thing right, it will come at its set time.
And we're still waiting.
And we're still waiting for that set time. And that's why the Jews will say, and I've heard this over and over again for a long time, the Messianic age was supposed to start
Okay.
when Jerusalem was destroyed. So that's why their hope was set on Bar Kokhba, because he had come back to Jerusalem. He had minted a coin, and he had people on his side, and it looked like, oh, good.
They actually defeated the Romans for a while.
For 3 years.
Wow.
But they didn't make it. They weren't there.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't come back in numbers. That's another thing. Ezra well, we'll get to that. Let's go on here.
Mm-hmm.
So the angel says there'll be
What verse now?
we were in 24, 7 cycles of a week of years. And then we read how all this, the perfection would come at the end of the 490 years.
Okay.
But you must know and be aware of this. Now, what is he supposed to be aware of? From the utterance of the word to restore and build Jerusalem until there is an anointed leader will be 7 cycles of 7 years. That's 49 years. Okay?
Yeah.
It comes out with, that's called a week of 7. That means 7 times 7, 49 years.
Mm-hmm.
We find out that Jeremiah prophesied 29:10 in 333:8
Mm-hmm.
that I'll read it here. The second one that he prophesied 70 years. For so said the Lord, for the completion of 70 years of Babylon, I will remember you, and I will fulfill my good word, Devar, toward you to restore you to this place. This 70 years started with the destruction of the temple.
Okay.
And they would be restored to this place. It takes more than, it's part of the 70 years.
Okay. It's not the end of 70 years.
The end of the 70 years is when the temple is completed, not when it begins.
Okay.
But
what did Daniel think?
Daniel thought that the 70 years of both would end with the Babylonian kingdom coming down. So he's already into the first year of Daravesh, and nothing's happening with the people. Babylon has fallen, but the people are still in Babylon. And there's no word going out saying that they can go back.
Right. Okay.
So the angel's telling him, well, there will be a cycle of 7 years. That's 49 years. If you take the 33338 and subtract it from 3391, which is when Cyrus calls for the city and the temple to be rebuilt, it's approximately 52 years,
Okay.
which is a little past 49.
Mm-hmm.
But the Jews teach that if you're in the middle of a week like that, if it's the 49th, see, you're still in your 49th week,
Mm-hmm.
then the prophecy is still fulfilled, even though it goes over 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
It doesn't mean the prophecy hasn't been fulfilled because you haven't got to the 50th week. Okay? So with it fulfills that prophecy within its parameters. And so what the angel is saying to Daniel is, we're in that period. You're going to get to go, but it depends on this word that goes out.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go to Ezra chapter 1, he says, in the first year of Koresh, king of Persia, Koresh is another name. I think this is the guy that follows. First we have Darius, and Koresh is the Hebrew word for Cyrus.
For Cyrus. Okay.
All right, Cyrus, God announced in Isaiah, was his Messiah.
Right.
The word Messiah is a very general term.
Right.
It's somebody that's appointed by God to do something.
Anointed.
And they're anointed. Well, appointed and anointed, because I don't know that the oil was actually poured on Koresh.
Yeah. Okay.
But the first year of Koresh, or King Cyrus of Persia, when Yah's word pronounced by Jeremiah had come to pass,
Oh.
this is the second word, the one in 29, the Lord stirred the spirit of Koresh, king of Persia, and he issued a proclamation throughout his kingdom by word of mouth and written word as well. So Koresh came in Darius was only in 1 year. And then a year went by, and approximately in the first or second year of Koresh, the word comes out. So Daniel had to wait a couple of more years when he was struggling with this. But at least in his heart, he knows now that they haven't sinned too much to be able to go back
Right.
and get the house of God started. So he has charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem in Yehuda. That's what Koresh has said. Koresh is saying about himself, God has charged me to build a house in Jerusalem.
Wow.
And that's Isaiah. Now, did he hear from Isaiah? Isaiah is no longer living.
No.
how did he find out Isaiah said that? But anyway, he understands that that's what God wants.
Maybe Daniel told him.
Maybe Daniel told him, yeah. We don't know, but it just says that he has charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem. And so he starts the process there. And it was quite a difficult process. If you read the whole story, it got stopped, and a number of years went by before they got started again. And if you read Haggai and Zechariah, they found the people were building their own homes and not working on the temple, and all kinds of things were happening. So now we are down in verse 25. You must know this. Gabriel says, you must know and be aware of this, that from the utterance of the word to restore and build Jerusalem until there's an anointed leader, Horish or Cyrus, will be 7 cycles of 7 years. That's the 49 years I explained, which turned out to be 52. But within the prophecy, when it says weeks, it was still within the 7th week. And during 62 cycles of 7 years, it will be rebuilt with a plaza and a moat. Okay, 62 cycles of years, you add that to the first 49 years, and it comes out 490. That makes up the whole of the 7 times 7 weeks of years, which turns out to be 490. Okay.
And that's when the temple was.
It was destroyed, but he's saying it takes.
It says here we rebuilt.
Yes, they did. They rebuilt the temple, and it says there's a moat and so on and so forth, but it was going to be difficult. They were going to have a lot of problems keeping it after they built it and so on and so forth. 62 cycles of 7 years. It will be rebuilt with a plaza and a boat, albeit in times of distress. So even though they got it built within the 70-year period of the prophecy, it was finished, which I have down here, and I couldn't show the bottom line. It shows that it was finished in 3408, 70 years. It was finished. That was from the beginning of when they built it to the end, and it was a finish of 70 years for the prophecy that he'd had concerning the temple.
So that fulfilled that.
That fulfilled that. So now, from that point on, 304:08 to 300. These numbers are so small I can hardly read them. 3829. That's when that's the same as the year that Titus raises Herod's temple in the year 3829. It comes out the 490 years. It sounds like it could be in the middle of the 1 year, like a half a year over, but that basically is the 490 years. And since the calendars are, you can't exactly jive a Gregorian calendar with the Jewish calendar. So with it that close, it's really the fulfillment of the 490 years that the angel is telling him. So what is going to happen then at the end of that 490 years? It says, after the 62 cycles of 7 years, the anointed one will disappear. That is, it says, the anointed one will disappear. What does he say about that? He says it was there was no longer a high priest.
No.
The first first, an anointed one, the high priest, would be cut off and would cease his ecclesiastical functions. Second, the people of the prince, is the legions of Vespasian and Titus, would come to destroy the holy city and its sanctuary. Both of these tragic events occurred simultaneously shortly after the 434 years or 62 weeks were completed. So what happened also that is not in this was that the sanctuary, they stopped the sacrifices.
The Titus did, right?
The Romans.
The Romans, yeah.
Then Titus invaded the country, and that was in 66 AD. And then he allowed it to start again, and then 3.5 years later it was cut off again. So they had 3.5 years when they got to sacrifice.
Wonder why it was started again.
I don't know. That's It says here there will be after 62 cycles of 7 years, the anointed one will disappear. There will be none, and an army of the next ruler will destroy the city.
So this cutoff of the anointed one, you say, has to do with the priest?
Yeah, there was the priest is an anointed one too.
And he disappeared in 66. Is that what you're saying?
I think it was after the destruction of the temple.
Oh, I thought it was
actually, was he the one that escaped in the coffin?
Maybe, I don't know.
Because that was an important guy, and he knew his life was on the line.
Did he escape before the destruction?
No, it was when it was happening.
Oh.
It was they wanted to get him out.
Yeah.
To preserve his life, and so they thought up this plot, put him in a coffin, and he took them to Titus, and maybe it was Vespasian came in first, didn't he? And then he sent his son Titus to finish up the job.
Yeah.
So it was Vespasian that they opened the coffin up, and this guy got out and prophesied and says, "You're going to be the next emperor." And he was so impressed that he saved his life. And then he went to Yavne and started this
important Jewish
community that Vespasian allowed him to do.
Yeah.
But there was no more a temple.
And he did become the
and he did become the emperor.
Yeah.
And he sent his son Titus in to finish up the job. But I think that was sort of like at the end of they were going down.
Yeah.
When this guy was snuck out.
So the guy who snuck out before the destruction was really completed.
Yeah. It was just about done.
And that was the cutting off of the anointed one mentioned here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now the next ruler destroyed the city and the sanctuary.
Where are you now? What verse?
We're at the end of verse 26. I'll read from the phrase again. There will be none. There will be no more anointed one. And the army of the next ruler will destroy the city and the sanctuary. The army is Titus, his son, and the next ruler was Vespasian, who became the emperor.
Right.
But his end will be in a flood. Now, these floods that they mention are really wars.
Okay.
And until the end of the decreed war, there will be desolations. We'll talk about the desolations. Let me finish this thing because it goes back. He will make a strong alliance with the multitude for 1 7-year cycle. Then for half of the 7-year cycle, he will ban sacrifices and grain offerings. And on the place they were brought will be desolated abominations till annihilation ordained is poured out upon the desolator. So what happened was when he first came into the country, that's what I was talking about. He let them have their sacrifices.
Now who is this?
Or no, he cut them off. He cut them off when he first came in. Then 3.5 years later, he let them start again.
And who's this?
Vespasian.
Okay.
And then he sent his son Titus to finish up the job of bringing down Jerusalem. And of course, then it was cut off, all the offerings, and there was no more temple.
Mm-hmm.
And on the place where they brought these grain offerings and sacrifices, that means the temple, will be desolating abominations until the annihilation ordained is poured out upon the desolator. Okay, now we don't name the desolator here because there's desolations. So what happened? Rome promised Israel that they could build a temple. So that's when Bar Kokhba went in. He was going to help them build this temple. Then Hadrian, the one that announced this, decided, no, we're going to build a Jupiter temple.
Mm-hmm. I wonder why he decided on a temple first.
Something was said that made him angry about the Jews again.
Yeah, but why was he favorable toward, after destruction in 70 AD, why was he favorable toward the Jews to build a temple again?
I don't know. See, that was 135, so that was 70 years from 135, 60 years or so.
Yeah.
And so that's when Bar Kokhba rose, and he was going to help build this temple.
Right.
And he minted coins and so on and so forth. But then Rome defeated them and put Jupiter, the temple to Jupiter, on there. And then, for some reason or other, the Eastern Church gained control of the religious part of Rome, and they turned the Jupiter abomination into a Christian abomination. And it became dedicated to, I don't know, maybe it was the Son of God. Some say the word Son of God is in there. That's in the Temple on the Mount.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so then Muhammad comes in, or his group.
Not the temple, but you're talking about
the temple. It isn't the temple. The temple.
No.
These abominations are put on the temple spot.
But is that the Dome of the Rock?
This is This is the interesting thing. When we were reading Ezra this week, it said they built the second temple on the spot.
Oh, yeah.
Where the first one, where Solomon's temple had been. Then the abominations went on top of that spot. So they know that's where Solomon's temple was. I don't know why there's a big argument about it. I really don't. So we get abomination upon abomination. Muslims came in. They took over the Christian church and turned it into what we've got today, the mosque.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they don't call it a mosque.
No.
It's a...
You're a mosque is separate than another mosque.
What do they call it?
Dome of the Rock.
Dome of the Rock. Anyway, it's a site that they call holy.
But it says Dome of the Rock. What's the rock?
The rock is where the Holy of Holies was.
Yeah.
So he says there's going to be annihilations, there's going to be wars, there's going to be floods, and there's going to be abominations, and it's going to go on until, and that's that certain time. If we don't get our act together, it's still coming. There's a time when God's going to say, I'm going to pour out desolations on the desolator.
And what's interesting is that when Israel reconquered Jerusalem in 67, they could have taken over the Temple Mount, and they could have even built the temple if they wanted.
They could have. If they had the faith, they could have done it.
They didn't have the belief. They didn't know what to do.
The army commander says, oh no, we'll let the Jordanians be oversight.
And now the Jews are not allowed to pray up there, and they've had problems upon problems upon problems with the Muslims up on where the temple is supposed to be.
What a shame.
Oh
Well, we did get through 9. That's it.
But we're still looking. We're still looking for that time when no matter what happens with the Jews, God's going to act.
Yes, and we don't know what that time is. Yeah. They say, well, 6,000 years is the deadline, but it might be before that.
Yeah.
Because, and I don't want to go into it now. There's a prophecy in Hosea that talks about, I will restore you on the 3rd day.
Oh, yes. So
the restoration has to take place before you get to 6,000 years. And we're 218 years out from that.
Wow.
So the next 218 years.
So that's why we need to pray. We need to watch the current events and see what's happening over here.
Well, you know, I said when we were looking at Ezekiel that the whole house of Israel has to be here.
Yeah.
And when the whole house of Israel, what is the sign? They'll quit destroying Jewish villages.
Yeah.
Oh, I was so disappointed a week ago.
Yeah.
When they destroyed another village. Bennett said that he wasn't going to let villages be destroyed, and that word didn't come true. It's sad. And they're blaming the Jews and not the Arabs for the murder of a Jew.
Something's got to change.
We're not there. And I said to you this morning, every rabbi sitting in America that is looking for the Messiah to come should be guiding their congregation to this land.
They should be packing their bags and getting over here.
That's right. Every single one of them.
Even a lot of Jews, even in Israel, will say, well, there's a place for Jews in diaspora.
Yeah, which shows that their heart isn't in what God wants to do. God wants his land. This is his land.
Why aren't they here? Because America is so wonderful.
Yeah, well, that's a very selfish thing because it's God's land, and he says, you're my tenants. Well, get over here and tend to his business. Yeah. That's the whole idea. And, it's hard. The Iranians are making plans of how they're going to demolish the reactor down here in Dimona, 26 miles away.
Yeah.
Am I living in fear? No.
Well,
there's no point in living in fear, but these things are happening because people are not doing it.
All the Jews will say, in fact, they mourn this, even in fast concerning the fact that the temple was destroyed, the Jews were sent out to Babylon, Israel, the 10 tribes were sent out all over the place, and then Rome destroyed the temple, they were sent out again all over the place. So being all over the place out there that's not what should have happened. They should have been here.
No. At least all the ones that were in Babylon or Iraq are home. There's only one guy left there to tend the shul.
But maybe it takes something to happen in America to get the Jews here. I don't know.
Frank, this has become the longest video. I just looked at the clock and we've gone way over time.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. Nobody will want to listen to this.
No, I know. Anyway, I listen to it.
It's for you, Frank.
I know.
Okay, well, we always like those who want to join us, and you have a good week, and we'll talk to you more next week about something further. So have a good week. Bye-bye.